For another investor perspective, let's turn to Tom Mastrobuoni, Chief Investment Officer at Big Idea Ventures.
Hi, everyone. This is Tom Mastrobuoni. I'm Chief Investment Officer here at Big Idea Ventures. We're a multi-fund, multi-stage venture fund founded by Andrew Ive, based out of New York and Singapore. Our funds cover alternative protein, sustainability, and innovations across the food system. When we think about notable trends for food tech innovation and funding, certainly we have to talk about alternative proteins. We have seen an explosion of brands, an explosion of consumer demand, and what's really interesting are the big food companies coming into this sector. We've seen Beyond Meat go have a public listing. We're all waiting patiently, some of us impatiently, for Impossible Foods to have their public listing. But I think what we've seen, and the question has been answered, plant-based protein is here to stay. It is indeed a trend that continues to grow. How big that market gets, a lot of that will depend upon what the big food companies do, and a lot of it also depend on what consumers want. When we think about various geographies, consumers make different choices for different reasons. In the US, it's health-centric, it's brand, it's what's cool and what's hot. In Europe, it's more animal welfare, sustainability focused, and in Asia, it's more about optionality as well. So we're seeing a variety of demographics, we're seeing a variety of consumers, and the brand expansion is really exciting. We want to pump the brakes a little bit, though, because it is getting a little crowded in that space. And when folks come to us and talk about, I have a brand new idea for a plant-based patty, we don't get terribly excited because it's a very crowded market and slotting is expensive. We are really interested in what's going on in the enabling technologies for plant-based protein right now. When we talk about things like texturizing, when we talk about things like flavor and nutritional panels, how do we get that ingredient list down from 30 plus items to 8 or 9? So seeing new innovations there is really exciting for us. Long-term, certainly cell-based protein is an area that we're spending a lot of time on. Again, enabling technologies here. We're all familiar with what's going on cost-wise for cell-based protein. So as we think about new technologies, new ways to bring those costs down, whether it's around growth medium or scaffolding, again, these are areas that we're interested in, and we think long-term will be a lot more exciting from an investment perspective. You can't think about food and the food system without thinking about how COVID-19 has affected all of us. I know I'm based in New Jersey here in the US, and I never thought that I would, let alone my children, would experience things like rationing of protein or even paper towel and toilet paper in the grocery store, yet we experienced that. And what it taught us was something that people who worked in the food industry knew all along, and the chairman of Tyson Foods, my old employer, wrote an op-ed about it, that the food system, we all knew was fragile, right? We had moved to a very just-in-time inventory system of food production, and it wouldn't take a significant stress. It would just take a prolonged stress to make that system snap. And what we had was a very significant, very acute stressor on the system, and it certainly did crack that food chain. In terms of long-term, obviously food service has been significantly affected. You're seeing revenues down more than 50, some cases over 70% on the food service side. You saw meat manufacturers switch plants from food service packing to retail and case-ready packing. So we've certainly seen some intense disruption there. You can't talk about COVID-19 without talking about the human factor, and thousands of food industry workers, not only on the meat side. We heard a lot of stories about the meat plants, but also on the agriculture side. There were several stories of harvesting teams in California and other parts of the US that were falling ill. This virus was a proximity problem. It wasn't a food problem. It wasn't a meat problem. It's not a produce problem. It was a proximity problem. And we were cramming people into facilities to produce as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And that is what sped the spread of the virus internally. In terms of innovation, we're still seeing deals get done, right? We're still seeing rounds get announced, big rounds. Benson Hill just closed a large round. We just heard news that a plant-based dairy company we all know and love is closing a round moving forward. A plant-based seafood company we're working with is going to be closing a round shortly. Probably by the time you all see this, it will have been announced, hopefully. We could talk about it. But we're seeing deals get done. The structure of those deals for sure has changed. Valuations have come down slightly, or holding. They're not continuing to increase as we've seen for a long time. And we're seeing a lot more convertible debt deals be done as opposed to equity deals. There's a lot of uncertainty about what does COVID mean long term for the valuations of companies, and how is that development roadmap going to change vis-a-vis the virus and its long-term effects. This is a novel, by its name, it's a novel virus. We don't know enough about this to accurately predict what's going to happen next year, or let alone next month. We keep waiting for our schools to change constantly, when our kids are going to stay home or go back to school full time. So it's hard to accurately predict. All we can do is continue to innovate, continue to explore new applications for tech in the food system. We're seeing corporates and strategics are paying a lot of attention to health and safety innovations and traceability, and robotics. A lot of work being done right now in automation for the food industry. You're going to see a lot of things not only coming out of the VC world in that space, but also from the strategic side on the corporates. Why is Israel important? I had the good fortune of visiting Tel Aviv and Jerusalem when I was with Tyson. We invested in future meat technologies out of the country. And what we found, we did field trips all the time, right? We'd visit California, North Carolina, Boston, Austin, Texas, hubs of innovation and biotech and food. We never had the success rate in terms of finding interesting companies that we did when we visited Israel. My partner Reese and I met probably 30 companies. About 12 of them were really interesting. On a traditional field trip, if I meet 20 companies, maybe one or two are really compelling. We had such a high success rate. We find that when it comes to doing more with less, when it comes to leveraging a constrained resource stack like Israel has to do constantly, and across all industries, not just food, whether it's water, whether it's security, defense, technology, and food, there just seems to be, and you capture it with Startup Nation, right? So that name alone encapsulates it all. There's a mentality, let's do more with less. Let's find a pathway forward and overcome obstacles that some startups in other countries, we have a difficulty seeing that same success. So Israel is an important place for big idea ventures to continue to find new and interesting opportunities. We plan to have some people either in that region or near that region soon as we expand our global footprint, and look forward to investing in some new companies there soon.